Cheryl Minieri,
Hi.
thank you so much for coming in and
Thank you
talking
for
to
having
us
me.
about the history of Polymnia. What we're trying to do here is just capture a glimpse from some of the longest serving members of Polymnia,
Okay.
of what the history of Polymnia has been like.
Okay.
So when did you join?
I joined in 1972.
Wow, so that's 52 years.
Yeah, and actually, how I got interested in Polymnia is my mother sang in Polymnia. Her name was Eleanor Toland. And I went to one of the concerts, I think it was Verdi's Requiem, and it's a very dramatic, powerful piece. And I was 15,
Wow.
and they had trumpets going, 3 or 4 trumpets and timpanis. And I did like rock music as a kid, but I heard that and I said, wow, I'd like to sing that. And so I told my mother, and she says, well, it's not a kids group, it's an adult group. So when I was 18, I joined Polymnia.
Wow. So you actually joined at, well, didn't join, but you attended
I
at 15.
was aware of it, yes. I went to the concerts for my mother at 15, and I like classical music. Probably odd at that time, the kids would, but I like the classical music.
And do you think that was because of your experience with Polymnia?
No, I actually liked Handel's music.
Okay.
Actually, he's my favorite composer. And I would listen to WCRB. I liked that music. I like all sorts of music.
So you joined at 18. What was it like for an 18-year-old with a bunch of much older people? What was it like for you?
Well, there's a wide variety of ages in there. I was probably the youngest one, and people were very nice to me. They knew I was a kid and so forth. So they were nice. They're kind of like mother figures with me, you know, singing with me. And
so you have this vast array of experience with Polymnia.
yeah.
Were there anything back in when you started at 18, how was the experience any different than it is today, do you think?
Well, I'd say probably before my time, people would really get dressed up to come to Polymnia, and I have pictures here of high heels and
Wow.
jewelry and dresses.
This is for the
and
rehearsals?
skirts. Yeah,
Wow, even for the rehearsals?
yeah, and they'd get very dressed up, and that would be pretty much it. I mean, the format of the rehearsals would go the same.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through many different conductors with different personalities, many accompanists, and so forth. How is it different now? I'd say, well, I'll give you an example for the Pops. Well, first of all, we used to file in on the stage and would say, you're behind me, no, you're in front of me, and we'd make sure backstage we all knew which way we were supposed to go in, behind who, and so forth. And for the Pops concert, we all wore long gowns.
Oh, wow.
And we wore pastel gowns.
And nowadays it's much less formal.
Well,
For Pops.
now it seems like I'm trying to find 60s clothes because we do a lot of concerts with the artists that were in the 1960s. And we did that, and pretty much the format has stayed the same. Yeah, I think that
Okay.
that's what we...
So is there anything in particular about your experience being in Polymnia all these years that you enjoy the most?
I enjoy, I've made a lot of nice friends in Polymnia, and some of them have kept in touch with me, even ones who have retired from Polymnia and no longer sing. I keep in touch with them sometimes around the holidays and so forth. And sometimes they come to the concerts, and I speak to them.
So it's been kind of like an extended family in a way, or
It is.
extended circle of friends.
It is, and I looked in one of these notebooks here, and I didn't go to it, but I guess they had a barbecue at somebody's house or summer place in New Hampshire, whatever, and people went there. The other thing we used to do at the end of the year, we'd have an end of year party at Eleanor Harris's house. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she lived up in a place called Ledgewood Winds, which is a house way up Boston Rock Road overlooking the ballpark at Pine Banks
Yeah,
Park.
I'm familiar with that.
And Eleanor was definitely a character, and she'd have us all up there for the year-end party, and she had a very unique house. She had a painting of Renoir on her refrigerator, and she loved dolls, big dolls. She loved angels. And in the living room, she had all these dolls with like silver garland around their heads, like they were halos. And she had these miniature merry-go-rounds on one of the beds, little 3 of them that went around. And it was just an extraordinary house. And it was beautiful to go out in her patio because you had that wind coming in, and you could see to Boston and all around because way up
I
high.
actually think I know the house you're talking about because you can see it from Pine Banks.
Yes, you can. It's a
Yeah.
white house.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know the one.
Yeah.
Can you describe what you enjoyed about some of the different artistic directors you've experienced?
I started off with David Sonnenschein in 1972. And David liked big orchestras and big pieces, a lot of which we don't really do a lot of anymore.
Yeah, it can get expensive.
That was part of the problem,
Yeah.
to pay for all these instruments coming in. And we started off doing the creation by Haydn. And then another piece which we collaborated with the Merrow Symphony was we did Puccini's Tosca. And people were in period dress. They were the long
wow.
dresses. We had people from Polymnia who were the soloists, so it was an opera.
Yeah.
And many people in Polymnia, I was in school, so I don't think I participated at that time, but a lot of the singers at that time were involved with singing that opera.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
That was a fun thing. I saw it, but it was fun to see a lot of people that I knew acting it out and so
Now,
forth.
did Polymnia, was Polymnia always performing at like Memorial Hall or at the St. Mary's, or were there
Well,
other places?
What I will show you here is the first program of Polymnia.
The
It
very
was
first one?
The very first one in December 12th, 1954. Okay.
Wow.
And at that time, it was performed in the Stoneham Town Hall.
Wow.
After that, for a few years, it was known as Polymnia Choral Society of Wakefield, and it was performed in different churches. I would say by the late 1950s into the 1960s, they started having their concerts in Memorial Hall, and all concerts, not just the pops. They would do those in Memorial Hall, and eventually we ended up at the Universalist Church in Narrows for many years,
Yeah.
doing our rehearsals there, and
Yeah.
then we came
I
over
remember
to the
some
other
of those.
church.
I was at some of those.
Yeah.
So what about the other artistic directors? Anybody in particular you enjoyed the most, or someone
I
who...
enjoyed, David was a very nice man, and we did a lot of pieces with him. I wrote notes down because there's so much of it.
so much,
I
50
think,
years of history.
I think
Yeah.
one of the things we did with David was the Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. I don't think we've ever done that again. And we had, he was a professor at Northeastern. We had the Northeastern Chorale. I think we had the symphony from there. We had a Zamir Chorale. I think they were associated with the Temple in Brookline. And that was a very dynamic piece. And afterwards, we sang in the Temple over in Brookline, and the people were so excited about it. They were dancing in the aisles. They really
Wow.
enjoyed the music.
Wow.
The other piece that David did was the Belshazzar, which the last time it was done was in 1907. It was written by George Handel. And I think in those days, oratorios went up to 4 to 6 hours, and beautiful music in that thing. And some of it I can still remember, but David tried to cut it down, and we were still singing at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
And people were walking out
Oh
because
my
it's
gosh.
like, and they did give us a standing ovation when that was over because it went on for over 4 hours.
So was the standing ovation because it was over, or because
I think it was like, hooray, it's all done, And so we enjoyed doing things like that with
That's
David. Steve Karadianis came next. We only had him for a couple of years. And I remember Steve in doing Trial by Jury, Gilbert and Sullivan. And we would sing, and Steve would sing with us, and he'd act it out.
Oh, no.
And so he was acting, then he'd conduct us and go back to acting again. And so then he had to leave because he was involved with the school, and he said he couldn't continue. So then we had Star Dimitri,
Oh, yeah.
for a couple of concerts. The next year, she did the HMS Pinafore by Gilbert and Sullivan, and then she did a Christmas concert. And what we had was, it was my voice teacher, Dorothy Schultes, came in and narrated the Christmas story, and then the chorus would sing songs in tune with what she was reading about.
Are there any artistic directors that stand out to you over the years?
Well, I like David.
Yeah, David, you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Richard Reynolds was only with us for one concert, but he was also my voice teacher. And I think the thing that I enjoyed with Richard is that he did Mendelssohn's Elijah, and I still remember that music now. Beautiful music, and he made me sing one of the solos in it. And I'm not a soloist.
What's it like to sing a solo for Polymnia?
Scared to death. Some people will get out there and they want it. I mean, there's people who sing in the pop stuff. They want that solo. I was not, but because he was my teacher, he says, you can do this. It was just a recitative, an angel singing or whatever. And I did it, but I was...
So how'd it go?
It went well, but I was very relieved when it was over.
I see.
No, I'm not really a soloist.
Got it. What about the big events? I know that they did a performance at Carnegie Hall with a bunch of other choirs. What other big events were there?
Let me see.
If any, I don't even know if there
Well,
were.
let me see. Well, I would say with, let me see, Jim Ray's, we had him for 12 years. We did the Mikado, everybody dressed in kimonos.
Oh my.
And they gave people fans when
That is
they
a big
came
deal.
in. And everybody sang, of course, all the people belonged to Polymnia. And everybody had kimonos and robes and everything. That was a lot of fun. We did Carmen, and dressed with Spanish flowers in her hair and so forth. Camina Barana we did with Paul Medor, who came down from Salem to play the keyboard. And one of the singers that we had, a tenor, was named Murray Kidd. And I think that was his introduction to Polymnia. And he liked our group, so I think 5-6 years after that, when the position was open, Murray auditioned to be the conductor, and everybody loved him.
He still is today.
And Murray is our longest.
What a great story.
Yeah, our longest conductor.
What do you think makes Polymnia stand out as a community group?
I think it just takes in people from all walks of life, people from all backgrounds. We've sung many songs in many different languages, people of all ages. It's very welcoming to anybody who wants to sing. And I will say, I am not really well read in reading music, and I study it and I try to learn it. A lot of times I learn it by ear.
Yeah, most
That's
people
how
do,
I
imagine,
learn. Like your wife Dorothy, just sits out and plays. But people were very kind to me. They helped me with my music. I will give you a story about my husband Jim. Many years ago, we had a tenor named Tom Donaldson. And Tom, there was only like 4 tenors. And Jimmy struggled with the music, and he would go to Tom's house and Tom would help him. And at that time, Tom was the only one in his family that was in the group. He was also the president.
Related to Ainsley?
Yes. And he was the president. He did sales, he did communication. His hands were in everything. Tom unfortunately died of a heart attack. And after that, his son Charlie came into the group and was president. And then Ainsley, and then his daughter Liz, and I think there's been a concert where Liz's daughter has sung. So I'd say that Tom's family gets the prize of everybody being in the group. We've had many families in Polymnia. I've written down just a few of them. The Donaldson family. My family, my mother sang in Polymnia for 41 years. And I joined. My sister Paula Tolan is in Polymnia now. Jimmy gets in there when he can. He has another singing group. And my stepdaughter Karen also sang a few concerts.
Wow.
We had Phyllis and Karen Dooley, Tom and Peachy Chafee. We had the twins, Edith and Elaine Stablicki.
Yeah, I remember them.
Yeah, Charlie and Sue Wilkinson, Star and Dimitri and her daughter Thea sometimes, John and Shirley Averill, Eleanor Harris and her brother Gilbert. Now, Eleanor was out there with, she looked like a Southern belle with a gown, and she had a parasol, and she'd sing in every pops, and she wanted that attention. Her brother Gilbert was just the opposite. He had to sing part of Trial by Jury. He'd gotten such an anxiety attack he couldn't sing it.
Oh, no.
But they were the opposite of brother and sister. Rosalind Stan Listenik, and we have Claire and Brad Gibson right now.
Sure.
So you have a lot of families. I think Polymnia is very welcoming to all sorts of people. Don't be afraid.
What about accompanists? You've had a lot of accompanists.
We have had accompanists. We've had Dorothy. I think Dorothy is the longest accompanist we have had.
20-something years. Yeah.
Yes, we had Terry Halco with Jim Rays, and we liked Terry had a good sense of humor. And he also was very creative. I think in a couple of our concerts, Terry wrote pieces for the keyboard, and he played them. We had Margaret Alma. We had Alice Dusenberry for many years. Alice was with us. Who did we have? Myron Press played for David Sonnenschein.
Any favorites, any stories about them you want to relate?
Well, I will say that Dorothy is not only great on the keyboard, but when she takes the women over to learn, she is really spot on, and she makes sure we learn that stuff. She's no fooling around with it. She gets right to it, and when she gets finished, I feel like, all right, I feel like I've got a grasp of something here. Sure. Terry had a good sense of humor. Myron was a very nice man. He was quiet, and sometimes played little funny things on the piano and so forth.
Well, I got a question for you. For over the 50-year period, when was the biggest laugh you had?
Oh my. I think there's probably a couple, but one of them was Murray was doing a Christmas song. It's beginning to look like Christmas, and the sopranos hit this high note, and Murray ran and hid behind a pole because it was like screeching out, and everybody burst out laughing with that. Another time, I forgot, I think it was Jim Ray's, we were singing in Memorial Hall, and without a doubt, every time we did a Pops concert, it's a historical building, you couldn't have any air conditioning or anything. Yeah. It would be hot as ever. And they opened the windows up on top, and we're singing, and all of a sudden a bat flew into Memorial Hall, and people started screeching and hiding behind the piano and running off.
Was this during a concert?
No, it was a rehearsal.
A rehearsal.
Oh, can you imagine?
Yeah.
And it was during a rehearsal, and the bat could care less what we were doing. He's just sauntering around, and everybody was freaked out. And of course, we couldn't reach him. He was way up high, and he just eventually flew off the
Oh, that's so funny.
Thing. And funny things.
Did you play any roles within the organization?
Yes, I was the Pops Committee Chairman for a couple of years back in the 80s. I think in the early 80s I did that for a couple of years. And I also did individual sponsorship for a couple of years as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, last question I have, unless you, I'm going to give you a chance to add some thoughts of your own if you'd like.
Okay.
52 years is a very long time, Cheryl. Tell me about some of you've already mentioned several people, a whole slew of people.
Yeah.
But thinking back over 52 years, who are the unforgettable people that you feel fortunate to have connected with because of your involvement with Polymnia?
Well, because I was an alto, Star Dimitri was very involved, and of course my mother was involved with her. I don't think I mentioned in the early part of Polymnia, we had a group of women called the Polyettes, which Star Dimitri was the head of.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we had Pops Men, and we also had Lollipops
Pops
too.
Men and
Pops
Lollipops.
Men. Ray Demick was the head of the Pops Men. He was also the choir director in my church.
Wow.
And so I knew him as a good friend. Star. I had friends in there that were just involved in my section, like Barbara Hazard and Dixie Love. We had Kay Delios, who used to bring the donuts in, and I originally came from Saugus, so I knew Kay's donut shop. And oh gosh, I'm trying to think. We had Carol Falk, we had Jane Baker.
So your answer is really there's so many that are unforgettable?
There is Jean Pendleton.
Oh, yeah.
Was one of our presidents many years ago, and her husband Phil played the piano, and then we had Minieri Rogers, who is also the conductor of the Lollipops, and people would bring in all their kids, the members of Polymnia, and the kids, we had 18 of them on the stage that sing, and Minieri Rogers did that conducting. She also played the organ, so Phil would play the piano at the Pops, and Minieri Rogers would play the organ. And we had Phyllis Dooley, you mentioned, of course, Erna Houghton.
Oh, yeah, Erna.
Yeah, we had Erna. Skip Kiley, sang with my husband. Like, if I went through these books, I could show you so many people. Tom and
So as far as you're concerned, they're all unforgettable.
Yeah. No, there was a lot of them that Masha Walsh I did work with for the 54th anniversary. And you're asking about Carnegie, but there was a lot of stuff with each person. We had Michelle Gravelin, and we did the 54th anniversary with her. I worked with Rose Center on trying to track down everybody to invite them to this party. Mm-hmm. And we had it at the Crestview Hotel, I guess, or Crestview Restaurant in Woburn. And we invited all the conductors from the past, and they all came, and I made a little picture thing of them on the table with maybe a piece of music that we remembered them by, and we had a nice dinner. And what I did was the history all around, the end of the perimeter of the hallway, and right from the very beginning up until 2004, I put the highlights of what we did in those times.
Wonderful.
And it was a special time.
So give us some parting thoughts. What you would say about your experience with Polymnia, what you might say to someone thinking about joining, that kind of thing. Give us some unless you have some other thoughts you'd like to add.
Well, to me, singing makes you feel happy. And it's not just the music. You learn something about the composer. We've done some premier pieces. I remember we did one by John Brovicki with Jim Ray's. It was probably one of the hardest things we could sing. It was contemporary, but it was very discord and so forth. So Jim would say, if we were talking too much, I'm going to make you sing Brovicki, that sort of a thing. I learned languages. At one time, a long time ago, you could get 1 credit up at North Shore Community College for participating in the concerts. I don't know how long they kept that for, but you could do that. I met a lot of interesting people. You learn a lot of musicals, a lot of classical pieces, and some of them I didn't like the music at the beginning, but when I got done with it, it's like I really liked it. And I think the thing with some of the pieces, like when we did the Mozart, I wasn't overly familiar with it, and it was hard to sing. But in Carnegie, how you get there is to practice. And by the end of it, you feel what the conductor is trying to convey. It's beyond the notes. And I had a few pieces that I felt that way. It's like, I really feel the piece. I feel what he's trying to say.
So you would say to someone, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun it's friends that you meet. It's a great thing to do on a Tuesday night. Don't hesitate to join.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't. I've had a couple people come in and say, "This is not for me." They get all nervous. They say, "Just give it a chance." And I'll say, "I don't really read music well. I have Katrina in the back of me, thank God, because it's like sometimes my timing is off or whatever, and so forth." And I'll say, if you just give it a chance, I think you're going to like it. and you're gonna find yourself singing things at home. And I found myself doing this too, songs that I didn't particularly think that I would like, and I find myself singing them. And I said, you learn such a wealth of music, all sorts of music, modern stuff, classical stuff, medieval stuff, stuff from many countries.
And you get to sing with a lot of new friends.
And you get to sing with a lot of new friends. And sometimes you get to go to places like New York.
Yeah, like New York. Yeah.
And we have, there was one time with Steve, we went into Filene's and sang in Boston in Filene's, and we went down to Faneuil Hall and we sang. And we've sung in different churches. I forgot where we went with Jim Ray's, but it was out in, I'd say it was out by Worcester. We sang there. We sang at Regis College.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we've sung at different places, and sometimes you get to get dressed up in different costumes.
So you get to see the world and dress.
Yeah, yeah.
Listen, on behalf of the Polymnia Choral Society, as a board member and as managing director of the Friends of Polymnia, I want to thank you for 50 years.
Thank
I
you.
know there's going to probably be many more.
I hope so.
Oh, I'm sure there will be. And we really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Okay.